That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Going to talk about a couple of stories in the news today. Jim, how you doing?
I'm good, Aaron. You're sounding a lot better.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better, getting there slowly but surely. Look, I just saw the note you sent me here.
Yeah.
I watched some of the interview clip that Pablo Rodriguez did with Premier Legault today. It's going to be a half hour that's going to air. I went through some of this and I thought, am I living in an alternate universe here, Jim, of some kind?
Yeah. It's ego, right? For those of you who have no idea whatsoever what we're talking about, Francois Legault gives a year-end interview, as he always does, as Quebec premiers always do. He's talking to Paul Rock over at TVA. And the essence of his message, what TVA has seized upon, they're reporting this as hard news, is saying, Bill 2, this bulldozer that he and his government drove right into every physician in Quebec, that has caused hundreds to leave, that have left hundreds more completely demoralized and wondering about their future here in Quebec. And now, as we discovered late last week, that the government has climbed down. They realize it's a disaster. They've climbed down. They have at least reached a deal with the general practitioners, and essentially everything, every draconian, ridiculous, illegal, controversial measure in this, which has been part of a feud that's been going on between the government and its doctors for at least a month, all of that has been eliminated, okay? So in other words, they climbed down. In other words, they had a big fight for nothing. And the moral of the story, according to Francois Legault talking to Paul Larocque, is if it hadn't been for that chicane, if it hadn't been for that crisis that Bill 2 created, we wouldn't have had the deal.
What?
Yeah. Exactly.
What sort of lunacy is that? He's basically saying, Jim, if I understand it, he is such a brilliant negotiator that when he got involved, all of a sudden, and he knew this would happen, he said, "You don't play your finishing hand at the open, right?" He's making it seem like he had this in line all the way.
This was my plan all along. This reminds me so much of Donald Trump, it isn't even funny. Okay, it's like this idea that I cannot, and under any circumstances, appear to be wrong about anything.
Yeah.
I cannot, under any circumstances, say that, this was another huge bungle on the part of my government that not just alienated and disrupted an already ailing healthcare system, but scared the hell out of patients who are wondering, well, is my doctor still going to be around next week because of what's going on? All of this going on in the midst of the usual garbage that's being spewed out by the CAC and the PQ, because now they're trying to, it's all about identity, it's all about language, rubbish. People were getting genuinely scared, genuinely concerned, and then to turn around and say, well, no, it was part of our plan all along, aren't I? No, you're not a Zen master. When I saw that, it was like I had to pull out my virtual passport and read like, you have now entered crazy town, because this is where we are, Aaron. This is no kidding anymore. I mean, we like to joke around about stuff, but this has become so, this government and this premier has become so détaché from reality and from the political reality of what's going on in Quebec. And once again, as I mentioned last week, what's really crazy here, Aaron, is when you look at each guy, each party leader, each is worse than the next. So we're kind of heading into 2026 with nobody in charge. Like the train is out of control. There's nobody in the locomotive, and the only people who know how to drive the train have yet to show up. So here we are wondering what's going to happen in October 2026 with the general election. And right now, as things stand right now, handicapping the contenders, if you will, none of the scenarios are good, Aaron. It's just a matter of who's the least bad choice that Quebecers have. And that, quite frankly, is not how you run a province.
I would ask one thing. I'm just going to think out of the box here. So remember, the doctors have until, I think, Friday, right, to say, yes, we accept this deal that was negotiated by their union. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine, Jim, if for whatever reason they decide, you know what, no, we don't think so? Then what does the premier say?
Then he'll have to find out a way to say, this too was part of my plan. No, I'm serious. No, Aaron, come on. Where are we going here? It's like, this is like nuts. And Paul Larocque, he's a respected journalist. He's no fool. So if they had to edit out a spit take, whether the guy just basically burst into maniacal laughter when he said that, but this is where we are. And if you ever need an indication that this is a government in its last gasp, and a government which is embodied in a single person, i.e. Francois Legault, Go watch that that interview, and you'll see what's going on. It's downright scary, but even more, it's so depressing because I always think there's, despite the way I sound on the radio, Aaron, I always like to think there's always hope, and maybe there is. But right now, I ain't seeing a whole hell of a lot of it anywhere.
Jim, unless I'm wrong, did he not also give you the impression that, when speaking to the premier, that he was invigorated and ready to go and can't wait for the election and all that stuff?
Yeah. But this is. I still, you and I were talking, and not just you and me, but most shows like this, most segments like this, people are saying, yeah, he's going to walk by Christmas. He's going to go, and then they said, well, if he's to save face, he'll either call an early election, or you know what, maybe he'll walk around Easter time. He'll just say, my work is done here, whatever. But we know, and this is the other problem, Aaron, is the inevitability of all of this, is that we know in the next public opinion survey, they're not going to do well in the polls. And once again, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, simply because he seems to be the only party leader who doesn't set himself on fire on a regular basis. He's going to be our choice as premier. He'd be the most popular guy because he isn't displaying all kinds of things that just make you go, how did this guy wind up running a party? But even then, he's had a few moments as well. So even that's kind of a false hope right there. But I'm telling you, I'm going into 2026. Usually you say, okay, A, B, and C is going to happen. And to a certain extent, that happened with Trudeau. With Justin Trudeau, we said he's going to go. He finally ended up going, even though he says, I'm not going to go. And maybe we'll have the same thing here with Legault. But the difference is, in the Liberal Party of Canada, there was a bunch of people who would actually go up to him and say, no, you got to go. Okay? And finally, there was the whole Chrystia Freeland thing where she presented publicly the letter of resignation, basically saying, essentially saying, I've lost faith in you. I don't think there's the equivalent of a Chrystia Freeland in the Coalition Avenir Quebec. Or any kind of equivalent there. This is a one-man show. He has no bench. There is no real successor. Christian Dubé, who's perhaps got the most flight time as a cabinet minister, he's made it clear this is his last term. And quite frankly, after the way Bill 2 was watered down, after he took all the flack for being the bad cop on this, we'll be surprised if he's still around even by the end of the term. But that's where we are. So as I say, but in the meantime, the world keeps turning. In the meantime, I heard you talking to Colton Prale before. We're looking at our grocery bills, and we got a guy who's saying, didn't I do a great job with the doctors?
Yeah, there's that. By the way, I wanted to point out something here with respect to Christian Dubé leaving. I think of a story today that I heard him talking about the fact that we're now going to start to look at the money being spent on Santé Quebec and just how out of control that's become. That will be the next fiasco they're going to have to deal with. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, it's just this was the whole idea. This goes, you know what this goes back to, buddy? This goes back, remember they said, hey, look at the millions we're spending on school board elections. No more school boards. You know why? Because we're business people. We know what's going on. Remember Pierre Fitzgibbon? He knew what was going on with that battery development. Christian Dubé, he's get the Top Guns. Let's get the private sector in there. They'll turn this thing around. Give me a break. We've heard this song so many times, and as you say, whether it's Santé Quebec, even going back to Northfolk, we don't know what the real damage is. Maybe we'll never know. Although God help God help us all when the next actual provincial budget is brought down. I'd love to see what the state of our finances are. But honestly, Aaron, this is where we are. What's the point? You might have a premier who at the end of the year would say, it's been a terrible year, and I've made mistakes, and I want to do better in 26. And you've got a premier saying, hey, look at me. It was a pretty smart move on my part, eh? Crying out loud.
Look, it's only a $15 billion deficit. We thought it'd be almost 16. Look what I've done. Yeah, okay.
Look at, come on.
Yeah, look, we've managed to get through the first half of this, Jim, and have not even brought up Pablo Rodriguez's name.
Well, neither did the youth wing. Apparently, there have been there's been petitions circulating apparently with disgruntled caucus or party members calling for Mr. Rodriguez's resignation. And interestingly, the youth wing, which is an integral part of the party, refused to take a stand one way or another. They said, well, we want to remain neutral, but quite frankly, that's damning with faint praise. I mean, the guy is still the leader. The guy is there, and he's got all kinds of problems. And people may be calling for him to leave, but he's not. He's given no indication that he's leaving. But that said, the youth wing is turning around saying, well, no, we're not going to take a stand. We don't support the guy. We don't not support the guy. Let's just see what's going to happen, which is like really kind of crazy. And honestly, as frustrated as we are, as frustrated as I'm sure our listeners are, I would imagine that across this great province of ours, the ever-dwindling number of card-carrying Liberal Party members, provincial Liberal Party members, is dwindling at the same rate it did back in 2018. Because talk about a false start, talk about a dead end, talk about, as you are joking right now, but you're not really joking, Aaron, talk about a story that keeps giving us some new bad headline almost on a daily basis.
I would just ask as we wrap up, Jim. So here we are. We're going to see nobody in the National Assembly for the next 5-6 weeks, whatever, until they get back. What do you think they're talking about at Liberal HQ right now? So with their next message to come out, what are you expecting is going to happen?
Listen, this is going to have to be. I mean, it's becoming clear that I have not heard. I mean, apart from Mr. Rodriguez, I have not heard a voice really raised, sincerely saying, no, leave the guy alone. This is all going to work out. This is going to be fine. The Liberal Party was fragile at best. It's a matter of record on this show. When I said, you're going to wait 2 years to have a leader? Oh, good luck with that. And we're seeing the results right now because everything has been smashed, Aaron. I don't see how this party can recover. Even if Mr. Rodriguez leaves tomorrow and they find a new leader in 2 months' time, 1 month's time, I don't see how this damage can be undone. Yeah. They drove a truck right through the brand. They were trying to put themselves back together post Charbonneau, post allegations of corruption, and they're back to square one at the worst possible time for the Quebec Liberal Party to be back at square one. And yet here we are. And we're hoping for change. I guess we should be careful what we wish for because thus far the change has not been good, and there's absolutely no indicator. And I hate to be this way, Aaron, but there's absolutely no indicator, in the short term at least, that things are going to change for the better.
James Mennie, over at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Matt.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.